Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License. With service to Kappa Kappa Tau of Wallace University, we ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that if you are pledging the TV Pilot's License podcast fraternity, our song is I'll Be There For You, and our mascot is John from Cincinnati.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Max Singer and Rick Inman. How are you boys doing today?
Hold on, stop. I am not missing my jab. Can we just hold on for a minute, guys?
Please hold for the national anthem of Don't Stop Chasing Waterfalls. Rich, how are you, bud?
Oh, God. Well, Geoff, this seems pretty poignant this week. The eyes of the world are on England right now. They just had an election. They have Silverstone happening this week. They have Wimbledon happening. They're in the Euro Cup. I couldn't be more prepared to do a show on the Queen.
Yeah, we're definitely doing the show on a queen, maybe a few queens, or some scream queens. This week,
he said the
show. This week, we're diving into Ryan Murphy's Scream Queens, and I'm pretty excited to dive into this one because it definitely had a cult feeling of like being a hit, being something that people watch. But Max, for folks who are joining us for the first time, maybe to hear us talk about young Glen Powell, maybe to hear us talk about Ariana Grande, or even this show. What is TV Pilot's License all about?
All right, Glen Powell stands, get on your feet. Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn a little bit more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if we think they can be made today, go back and stream the rest of our episodes from wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard, Glen Powell.
Rich,
if we say it enough times, he'll listen.
He'll come. He'll come on the podcast. Rich, what is your question of the week?
So I went into this show completely blind. I have never seen it. I've never watched an ad for it. I did not know who was in it. I had been surprised by the entire pilot that we watched. To the point where I just started writing down actors' names and been putting question marks next to them.
Jamie Lee Curtis question mark.
So obviously, I was pretty shocked at the appearance of both Ariana Grande and Nick Jonas in this show. So I want to know if you could take a show right now that's on right now, not something that's finished, and something that is on the air. And throw one pop star into it, or several pop stars, who knows? What are you doing?
All right. Well, Rich, when you sent this question, I immediately had an answer. It was so fast that I couldn't believe I had an answer that quickly. I want to take the world's straightest human being in Sabrina Carpenter and put her on RuPaul's Drag Race because I think she would explode. I think her mind would literally just explode. There's that idea of she took the Good Luck Babe. She took one of the gayest songs ever made and made it somehow straight by her cover of it. And like,
so you're having her go on RuPaul's Drag Race to answer for her crimes?
I want her on RuPaul's Drag Race because I think legitimately we might see her combust. Like she'll have no idea what happens. Where does the penis go? Like, all these questions will be things that I think she internally is questioning and also saying out loud.
I think she'd be a great judge.
I think it'd be the most fun to watch. I think she would not be the best judge. I think she'd be a lot of fun for us as the audience to enjoy.
Listen, Geoff, she's out here doing like ice cream collaborations and coffee collabs with like real venture capital backed chains. It is only a matter of time before she's just popping up on every show. There's an entire album she still has to roll out. We've only gotten 2 singles so far.
Oh my!
Wait, actually?
Yeah.
Oh God, Instagram is going to be intolerable.
Max, you said that you had an answer, actually, that I'm curious. What is it?
I am locked and loaded. We are sending pop music's favorite cool but slightly problematic Christian boy, Justin Bieber, to Gemstone Ministries, and we're putting him on Righteous Gemstones
that's such a good answer.
He is their newest member. They're getting money and donations out of him, and he just plays a completely oblivious, self-parodying version of himself on Righteous Gemstones.
Oh
It's
man,
amazing.
he went from Hillsong to evangelical. I love that. Oh god. I
So
think
Rich,
for mine, I would love to see. This seems like something that is actually within the realm of possibility if that's just them doing because of the fuck it nature of this show. I think you got to put Boy Genius as the front of house staff on the Bear. I think they would do. I think they do exceptionally well. I think it'd be very fun, and also just like in the same sense that they just throw random people into the show and be like, "Oh, it's that guy." That was fine. like Mulaney's character in it. It's fine. Uh, I think they would just absolutely nail being the new front of house staff for the Bear.
oh my gosh, I mean, I think we all have great ideas. So to the Hollywood executives who are listening to us, please, I would highly recommend give us a call. Give us we have some ideas that I think that you would definitely benefit from. Well, boys, let's dive a little bit more into Scream Queens. And we'll start off with a quick synopsis. Dean Munch declares that Kappa must accept any pledge. Chanel's plan to scare the pledges goes horribly wrong, and the Red Devil begins wreaking havoc. It's interesting because when you hear that, it's so sporadic. It sounds like three different shows all like driven into one. It's like, why is the brand Chanel trying to scare pledges? And who the fuck is Dean Munch? What did Kappa do? I'm really intrigued, but Max, how did the show get made?
So today we are talking about the pilot of Scream Queens, which aired on September 22nd, 2015 on Fox. And we're going back to a trio that we've covered before on this podcast. That's right, we're bringing it back to Ryan Murphy, Ian Brennan, and Brad Falchuk. If you'd like to learn more about these three, go back and check out our Glee episode for a full rundown of their backstory and how they came to be in the industry. So at this point, Murphy and Falchuk have found success post-Glee with their American Horror Story anthology. With Glee preparing to end its run, they team back up with Ian Brennan and begin exploring the coming-of-age slasher genre from the 80s and 90s they're all so infatuated with. Before cameras even roll, the show was given a 15-episode commitment by Fox with a second season guarantee in its contract. When it came to casting, the show turned to AHS Coven star Emma Roberts as the first and only choice to play lead Chanel Oberlin, and specifically wrote the role of her foil, Dean Munch, for Jamie Lee Curtis. Ryan Murphy states that if Curtis hadn't signed on, he wouldn't have made the show at all. One notable name who was cast but dropped out due to publicity commitments was Joe Manganiello, who was originally set to play the role of Wes Gardner. He's played by Oliver Hudson in today's pilot instead. Principal photography began in March 2015 on the campus of Tulane University in New Orleans, and Fox brought the pilot to Comic-Con in San Diego for a world premiere that July. A quick streaming note. This show originally had a 2-episode premiere on Fox. Hulu controls the streaming rights and airs the pilot and episode 2, titled Hell Week, as one 90-minute episode under the pilot banner. So for those who may choose to watch this week's episode, we'll only be covering what is officially credited as the pilot. So if you're watching on Hulu,
you don't want this episode to be 3 hours long.
Yeah, we're not talking about episode 2 Hell Week as much as Hulu wants you to think that's part of the pilot. We're just talking about the first official 46-minute pilot.
Well, Max, thank you so much for that walkthrough, and thank you so much for telling us a little bit more about how this got made. Let's dive into the show. Who doesn't like a horror-themed show that gives an ode to classic horror movies of, years before the current time, years before the present, when we're back in 1995.
If you're flashing back to start your show, I know that shit is going down.
And you understand the linear progression of time.
I mean, I really do.
Got him.
I do really enjoy the idea of setting the tone of just how awful everyone is going to be in this show. As far as there are very few redeemable characters that we see in the beginning of this show, right? There's a gigantic party going on. I will tell you both, I love you both enough that I would miss Waterfalls to go and make sure you went to the hospital if you both gave birth in a bathtub.
Oh my God, Jeff!
Yeah, that's so sweet.
That's so
kind. Know that's Max and my favorite song.
Yeah. We would dance to it on the way to the emergency room. I promise you.
Wow, that's the tender love and care we deserve.
I mean, what sort of tone did you guys get from this beginning? It definitely, from the start, is like, this is a dark comedy, fuck you, like, and fuck any sense of, like, that this is a family-friendly show.
I got major camp from
Yes.
the beginning. From the first 30 seconds of this show, I'm like, okay, we're existing in a universe where death is totally normal, and, like, it felt almost Scary Movie-ish with how they're dealing with the camp. And I mean, they really set the tone for how serious you're meant to take this show right off the bat.
It feels like a big budget production of a B movie in a very, and not the Jerry Seinfeld B movie, I mean like B slasher, B horror, just like midnight movie kind of stuff. And like as a compliment in a really good way. If we're talking about the dialogue in this first scene of this girl giving birth in the bathtub at a mixer, we get lines like, "Holy crap, who told you could have a baby here tonight?" And she's described as, quote, "all gross and postpartum. No one wants to see that at a party." So right away, this is telling you exactly what this show is going to be. That it is tongue-in-cheek, that it is hitting the tone of these camp horror classics from back in the day, that we're going to be doing elements of supernatural and slasher and college teen comedy. And it lets you know just immediately what it is. And it does feel distinctly Ryan Murphy. It gets that same kind of punchy humor that early Glee had, that Ian Brennan brought to the table. It gets what they learned from doing AHS, and it rolls it back into this kind of network primetime comedy format.
I haven't watched a lot of American Horror Story. Is this like a similar feel of, like, you know, how serious you're supposed to take it?
I would say the camera work feels similar.
Oh,
the way that
100%.
it angles up and it shifts a lot. It's very abstract, and we don't shoot a ton of stuff of its leads dead on. That feels very AHS to me.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan Murphy definitely has a style when it comes to a lot of his stuff. And it is very easy to see that style. The thing, Rich, that you might not have seen that would have really brought it off is there was an earthquake going on in the background the entire time as an ode to 911. But we do fast forward.
That was just your house shaking, Jeff.
Yeah, it was just my house shaking in Minnesota. Let's fast forward, though. We fast forward a whole ass 20 years to the start of the new school year. And we are instantly introduced to Emma Roberts' character of Chanel in this amazing... I read this quote that I think is so perfect for the description of the show. And they were like, we were definitely inspired by Mean Girls when, like, thinking of the character of Chanel. And Emma Roberts flawlessly does this role in, like, this sinister yet so, like, consumable of, like, just monster of a human being.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't get enough of said monster.
Yeah, I really don't think... I mean, even from the first moment, I was like, oh, this is going to get so nuts that, like, I can't possibly take any of these characters seriously. And just the way that they portray death in this show is so, like, over the top hilarious that you can't possibly be attached to anyone. Everyone has, like, such a... Number one, there's no police. There's no inherent fear in any characters, despite them existing in a, like, just in a world surrounded by death. I just, like, it is so... You have to go into this show with an understanding of, like, you're not going to be scared. It's just going to be funny iterations of people dying.
Max, what about yourself?
The villainy, the pure tyranny of Chanel Oberlin and how we get to meet this character is, dare I say, an iconic performance from Emma Roberts. Introducing the other nameless Chanels, getting Chanel number 2, Chanel number 3, and Chanel number 5. And you're just wondering, am I going to find out what happens to Chanel number 4?
And you do.
She died of meningitis, and we just move on. Because, you know, she couldn't pull her weight. She died of meningitis. That's her fault. And that's what this show does. I love the trope of when they show like Greek houses in movies and TV where there are these opulent mansions. She's basically living in like Cher Horowitz from Clueless's house.
Mhm.
It's just this incredible mansion with this big spiral staircase. They feel so like fantastical, and I love how we just like make this devoid of any reality, any realism so early on, so that the other characters we meet later on kind of give some depth and grounding to the story, and Chanel could just be in her own world. That's such a fun choice to make to separate it.
So, two things. One, Max, I have to think that there was probably some influence from Ryan Murphy looking at Greek life in Indiana when he was there, and some of the gigantic
and all the people
homes.
who died.
Yeah, all the people who died at Indiana. But the second thing is, I have to give like a small. We text each other when we are watching shows and seeing how things are going. And last night, I woke up this morning to just a series of texts from Rich, and one was just in all capital letters, Ariana Grande. And Rich, I want to hear what you were thinking when you saw Ariana Grande on screen as Chanel number 2.
I was trying to figure out what timeline of her fame existed in my brain, where I'm like, she seemed too big to do this show at the time, and like, I would say of the entire cast, like, now Ariana Grande and now Jamie Lee Curtis are both too big to do this. I know that Jamie Lee Curtis had like a long stretch of time where she was mostly like doing non-critically acclaimed things and was mostly known as the Activia yogurt lady. And I was shocked to see her in the show just in general, but also like, and I don't like to editorialize. I don't like to, give reviews on acting performances as not an actor myself. She is somehow the weakest actor in this. I have no idea how this happened, because she grew up she did Sam and Cat at a really young age, right?
I would actually say that there's a scene in this pilot that I think Ariana Grande gives one of my favorite performances in this entire
I think I know which one you're talking
by
about.
far.
I think she knows exactly what she's playing, and she does exactly that. She is just playing essentially, I guess, nameless drone character.
Yeah.
She's the Mean Girls Karen of it all. She's like the most loyal worker bee in the hive. It is crazy though, because you talk about like where in her career, where in her fame is this. Like, this show comes out a year after her second record came out, and I'm looking at it now. Record number 2, My Everything, dropped in summer of 2014, featuring the singles Problem, Break Free, Bang Bang, and Love Me Harder. She is sitting on just 4 absolute heaters a year ago, and then we just bring her in here and just let her play like goofy worker bee. It's delightful, and I'm sure she had a lot of fun with it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, seeing the great thing about this show, and like as we sort of move the plot forward, is there's a lot of actors that we see that either this was the start of something, this was their first bigger break, or that they're now, as we live currently 9 years later from this pilot, they're absolutely destroying it, right? So let's move forward, because it's not all about Chanel, right? This story is about more than Chanel. We get the other side of the coin, and in this instance, we meet a young woman who is set to go off to college, leaving her dad. She is her mom died when she was younger. There are definitely the illusions of maybe she is that baby that was born Kappa Kappa Tau. And there is a sense of she wants to be a part of something that her mother was a part of way back in the day, based off of her faint memories of her mom.
Yeah, I 100% thought that Grace Gardner was the baby from the bathtub. I don't know
really thought
guys.
that too, yeah.
Yeah, and like I will give Wes Gardner a lot of credit for, he was only in this movie or the show for 2 scenes, right? And I thought he did a great job being the dad, even though he's not that much older than Grace Gardner. the actress who plays Grace Gardner, Skylar Samuels. Like I enjoyed their performance. I enjoyed their chemistry together. But then instantly having this heartfelt moment and having Keke Palmer walk in.
Yeah, honestly, I did not know Keke Palmer was in this too. I was just like absolutely like jaw drop moment that the level of star power that this entire show has. I mean, they really got everyone like right before they were too big to do this.
Max, what about you? Like seeing Keke Palmer, then like this is not the last of the stars that we see as we're within maybe the first 10 minutes of this pilot total.
It's a stacked cast, and I love that with Keke Palmer, who plays Zayday Williams and Grace, you get this classic like college vibe. It starts shifting into like college story. We definitely play Grace as being this final girl character already. We're setting her up as I'm not like other girls. You know, I have this like trajectory that I'm on. I have this thing that I want to accomplish. And we just play into that so well. And Keke Palmer as just this best friend, roommate, sidekick. We know that she's going to obviously carry a big like load of the show as we move forward. I'm actually in real time though realizing I might have to change my prophecy on Grace, because her dad plays her like a college mixtape song of his, I believe it is, and it's 1,000 Years by Christina Perri, and the timelines aren't matching up for her to be the baby in the bathtub.
It was her. It was the song that she loved from Twilight. That's what the reference was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the timeline is back on.
Max is like 2 podcast episodes away from cracking this thing.
So I want to talk about probably one of my favorite scenes that we have in this entire pilot. And that is the work that Jamie Lee Curtis does as Dean Munch. I think is spectacular. Of like Jamie Lee Curtis is in a league of her own on this pilot. She is like destroying, like eating everything, like literally munching on everything that she is given. And
the original Scream Queen herself.
Yeah,
truly.
I mean, the matriarch of this genre of character.
And
it really makes sense that they wrote it for her.
Yeah, and her mom being a Scream Queen as well. Like, I think that she does such a good
She's a legacy.
Yeah, she does such a good job of setting the tone of like, I'm quote unquote the big bad. I am this force, but also delivering. There's very much a certain style of acting that needs to be done to deliver lines that have been written by Ryan Murphy due to the sarcasm that's associated with them, the darkness that's associated with them. And Jamie Lee Curtis does it to a T, and I think does a great job against Emma Watson. And that's not even to mention Nasim Pedrad,
who
showing up,
dude,
down in this pilot.
And
yeah,
I think this was, Max, you might be able to correct me. Was this like right after she left SNL that she decided that she was like on this?
Well, she did Mulaney.
Yeah,
and
so
then...
and that went on for like forever, right? Like
so that was a pretty crazy 2 months for her.
Yeah,
but
she had no availability, and they were like, "Can we get you for 1 episode, please, Nasim?"
Also, just looked it up. Pedrad was on SNL from 2009 to 14. So yeah, this pilot would have been done right after she left SNL in the spring of 14.
And New Girl, right? New Girl was around the same time.
New Girl was a couple years later too. Okay. So like, Nasim was really doing great work, and like this is just an example of her at the height of her powers, right? Like of just coming in, being that comedy force, being able to be the butt of the joke in certain times, but also getting every laugh, and some that weren't even deserved.
Whoever in this trio wrote the line that she graduated summa cum laude from a 3rd-tier Caribbean law school is brilliant. The specificity in this show, it is off the charts. From both the one-liners to even the way we capture tone. Jamie Lee Curtis's Dean Munch has this part Dean Wormer from Animal House, part actual slasher villain. Am I being, suspicious of you combination that's so great. We should also just shout out that there is a scene that actually replicates the Janet Leigh Psycho shower curtain teardown in a flashback of an event that happened with the Kappa House that is just chef's kiss. It's such a lovely homage to Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh and that entire lineage. I mean, I could just go on about the specifics, and Nasim Pedrad nails every line she's given.
Yeah, justice for Nasim. She needs to be in everything.
Why? Like, why are we not putting her in everything?
She was, I would argue that she was the most booked and busy former SNL cast member of probably the last 30 or 40 years. Like, it just immediately after leaving was in absolutely everything. She was, she seemed to like actually leave for another career.
I will say, if you have not seen the new Beverly Hills Cop, Nasim Pedrad is in it, and she has one scene that's magnificent. I absolutely love it, and I think like
why did it take her this long to get into that franchise? Why weren't we putting her in Beverly Hills Cop 1 or 2?
You're so right.
I mean, these are all great questions. I love that Ryan Murphy does such a good job of odes in this pilot to the actors, maybe their legacies as well, because like one of the great odes, and we see it right when we're at the sorority recruitment, is Billy Lord is wearing earmuffs, in honor of Carrie Fisher. That was something that Ryan Murphy specifically asked. He was like, would you be okay with this? Because I love your mom and I want you to do the Princess Leia look, but like in a modern day that we're never going to talk about out loud. But what did you guys think of this sorority recruitment? Because it wasn't the party we were supposed to be getting. We were supposed to be getting our side boob party and
side boob mixer.
Our side boob mixer. And I'm curious, were you happy to see a white party, or were you upset that we didn't get the side boob mixer and see how Ryan Murphy was going to make you scream through it?
I mean, personally, I am. Every time I see the foyer of this house, I get so nervous that I know that it's shot in New Orleans. And I'm like, there's no way you're letting people walk in off the street in New Orleans into the whitest house imaginable. Those streets are 4,000 years old. They are riddled with dirt. I would have a full panic attack trying to keep that house clean.
Max, what about you? As our former social chair of a fraternity, what are you thinking about the side boob mixer?
Listen, it's a top tier party theme.
We weren't there. We would have to level up.
Never went to a single side boob mixer. Listen, I don't know. Maybe future birthday parties of ours. Who's to say? We'll all get together.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure.
I never once saw champagne flutes getting passed out by catering staff at a Greek life mixer. Again, there's still time. Future birthday parties. We have not highlighted the other Chanel yet, so I just want to give a shout out to not only Ariana Grande, not only Billy Lord, who is laying the foundation for her iconic turn in Booksmart with this role here. We need to shout out the other Chanel, Abigail Breslin.
I know,
which is nuts.
This like trio here, and I guess quad if we're counting Emma Roberts. Iconic. They all nail this. They all know exactly what they're playing, and I feel like that clique, that cluster, just like eats up the tone of this show. And I think that Ryan Murphy was able to find people who so encapsulated the style of humor and the flow he was going for. Listen, we haven't talked a lot about plot. We're a little bit into this podcast. We have not really talked about the plot.
But to be fair, neither have they.
We're talking a lot about the tone. We're talking a lot about vibes. If you are someone who can just coast off of vibes for 46 minutes, you're going to love Scream Queens. Again, we have not really talked about the plot.
So let's talk a little bit about what our two main issues are in this pilot, because they get introduced fairly quickly, right? From this moment on. One is Kappa Kappa Tau's recruitment has to be open to anyone and everyone that would like to be a part of
a brilliant move
sorority, because it does allow for, like, from a writing perspective, it allows for a lot more different characters rather than just a bunch of Chanels running around and getting murdered.
It does two things right here. It's like, number one, it is, if you're talking from a horror perspective, it is leading the lambs to the slaughter. Already, like, you're taking these normal people, these normal unsuspecting teenagers, and pushing them towards the murder house. And then the second thing is that it actually, like, it throws itself towards a power clash, like a mutiny type situation. Like if it was just the white blonde Chanel girls. Also, this is like the most poorly attended sorority of all time. I don't know how they're affording this house, but yeah, it is very much like they're setting up the power struggle towards the top, but also like more fodder for people to die.
And I think that the other big issue that we have, and Max, you mentioned that scene that's an ode to Psycho. We see this man with a Red Devil mask. That
we haven't talked about this.
We haven't talked about this Red Devil masked man at all, and because he is there, he shows up outside of recruitment. With also 3 girls with candles that we never talk about again.
While you were all too busy yapping about side boob mixers, people are getting moited.
Also, I guess we kind of don't know. It's gender non-specific Red Devil, and also like it's still kind of like not really addressed by the rest of the people in the house. That like I think the reason that we get so lost in the vibes of the show is that murder does not seem to be a really big deal for anyone. It's really not like, you know, it's a very sparsely thought about topic for several people being dead by the time you're like 10, 15 minutes in.
Well, there's a part of that like I then am not surprised that they were able to sell this show to Fox. Right? Because, like, yes, Ryan Murphy was on top of the world at this point in time. He was at the height of his powers. But at the same time, if you were to go to Fox and be like, we're just going to do a show about a ton of murder and watching a ton of teens get murdered. And it's like, I don't really want that. What if murder was the thing that happens on the periphery? And we have this just zany bunch of characters that you love to hate. And then that is a little bit more, I think, for some executives, sellable in this instance. Like one really good example, hearing Emma Roberts' narration of the sorority recruitment pledges that they have is one of those things that I was just like, this is absolutely bonkers, but I could only see Emma Roberts doing it forever now. Like that's the only person I want talking about it. Like talking about was I fully prepared for Emma Roberts or Chanel to say something racist about Zayday? Like I was fully ready for it.
At every minute.
And I was like, that definitely was a joke that was taken off in the writer's room, because there was a version where they said, and we just can't let Zayday in with no explanation. Like,
yeah. They really, and this is like another pretty massive part of this show, and in the campiness that you have to like really mentally compartmentalize the overt racism that Chanel uses in the show, to the point where, I mean, we haven't even talked about Miss Bean yet. The
wild,
who she calls the White House slave of the house. She's the caretaker, the cleaner, the cook, I guess, for this house. And boy, do they treat her like I don't know, like 2 cents worth of dirt. It's bad.
Yeah. While we're just on this, obviously, 2015, we were starting to see a paradigm shift already, and it's this tricky line of we're doing jokes that feel like they are of a period, like we're doing jokes that feel like they would be in Heathers or like an old like 80s like third installment in a horror franchise kind of jokes, but we're doing them in 2015. And it's like it's that thing of, I understand where the humor comes from 100% and what they're paying homage to.
Yeah.
But it is also
it
is also jarring to see it 100%. In, you know, a show that premiered less than a decade ago.
Yeah. And that is, you know, it's so interesting to think about the swing of this, because like if they wrote this without the overt racism, like I know it still would have done well. Like I know it still would have been like its show, like the show that it was, but like you know, there is like a pretty big social media reckoning that was brewing at this point in time. Like we're about to like racism's about to become really back in fashion in a matter of months after the show airs. And it was just like it was pretty shocking to see that was the choice they made. But I mean, they really, if they built a fan base for this show, it is impressive how they were able to get over that with the social media era like this.
Oh yeah, because people were live tweeting the show when it happened.
Totally.
This was still in that era where if a show was on and you were watching, you were tweeting everything that you liked about the show. So we get our cast of pledges for the sorority, right? Potential future sisters. Everything from I have to say I loved the our character who was just like our deaf Taylor Swift is what they called her.
Oh my God.
I was losing my mind because that has become such a great character, and like some of the lines that are just said are, even though I can't hear the lyrics, I still scream and shout them. I was just like, this is insanity.
That is a character that could only exist pre-Reputation era and the cultural
100%.
reappraisal of Taylor Swift. Like, this is post 1989, like commercialization pop turn, like where we could still make these jokes before we had to, I don't know, evaluate her humanity.
Yeah, R.I.P. Deaf Taylor Swift. You would have loved Eras Tour.
Oh my gosh! Like the scene that happens after we get all these members of our sorority, though, I think
Who we're missing a very important celebrity cameo here, by the way, Jeff.
We are. Who's that?
We're not even talking about Lea Michele of it all. We're not even addressing
yes.
the Lea Michele in the room.
Sorry, I couldn't read the room.
Oh no, she's never going to come on the podcast now. And I've sent her so many emails.
I mean,
Wait a minute.
I do like the difference in character, because this was right around when Lea Michele left Glee full time and was only appearing part time. I like the idea of having Lea Michele play so against type, rather than the Rachel Berry character, be this girl in the neck brace who is extremely dorky, who is a little bit quieter but like just odd. It is a nice, like, as we continue to talk about the show's star power, and I want to get to a scene where we really exemplify that a lot. Lea Michele just being a forgotten character in this pilot is just such a great example.
Lea Michele just begging her agent, like, tell him I can do prop comedy. Tell him I can do physical comedy, too.
I'll wear a neck brace. I don't care. Write it in the script.
Don't write it into the script. Don't tell me.
It is a credit to Ryan Murphy, though, that he's able to get these people who were his stars in other projects who want to come back into the fold, and they take these smaller supporting roles just to be a part of what he's building. And I think that as a collaborator, as a showrunner, as a writer, you earn a degree of trust in these people you work with. And there's a reason why people keep going back into the Ryan Murphy fold time and time and time again. We get, Emma Roberts going from Coven into Scream Queens. We get Lea Michele going from Glee into Scream Queens. And we see it in all of his other projects too. People want to keep working with him for a reason.
So let's talk about the next scene, because we get probably one of the largest stars at the time, with a man who is now currently one of the largest stars in the world.
Truly.
In Nick Jonas with Glen Powell golfing in the quad in one of the I can't express enough how much I love how terrible both of these characters are, but how well they are performed by these two actors. Because Glen Powell absolutely destroys as the president of the most popular fraternity, who is just playing social capital with women, along with Nick Jonas, who is obviously infatuated, if not in love, with Glen Powell, playing the, his short king assistant in this.
This is a genre that we rarely see in comedy called male camp, where say that Michael Bay is their favorite director, male camp, having to, quote, cross swords every time they tee off with their golf clubs, a male camp. And even just hitting the golf balls into the quad, a direct lift from Animal House, a male camp.
I cannot believe how, like, I can't believe how well they made all of these characters so despicable. And I don't know. I really love this scene. They give Glen Powell the most insane direction of what he values in the show. It is, I mean, and also, like, to be honest, like, male camp, this show invented bottoms. I'll say it right now. Bottoms is male camp. This show invented this one scene invented bottoms.
And I think it just does a great job of continuing to show that from the idea of fraternity, Greek life within Wallace University, everyone is toxic. Everyone is horrible in this show. And everyone is just looking to get one up each other to become the most popular job out of Wallace University is to become a news anchor.
Yeah,
that is what I've learned.
To become news anchors.
Everyone wants to be a news anchor, which is mind-boggling. And like, but I also want the spin-off of the show where Glen Powell and Emma Roberts are just news anchors in like Milwaukee, and like they do the 1 p.m. shift.
Everyone who's in Scream Queens grows up to become Courtney Cox in Scream. Like, that's what it is. It's like you're going to be in this toxic, horrifying environment, and that's going to inspire you to cover toxic, horrifying events in the real world, and you're going to always be slime. This is also the birth of the iconic Emma Roberts crying meme that the GIF that you always see. When I saw that of her fake cry, I was like, oh, I see that on Twitter all the time. I know where that's from now.
And Rich, I know you mentioned that you were like, you didn't really enjoy Ariana Grande's performance, but I thought Nick Jonas destroyed in this performance of like being that assistant to Glen Powell, like being this broy bro who also might be a closeted man for Glen Powell. Which, you know,
also man camp.
Who isn't? But let's talk a little bit more about sort of a couple of the other scenes we see. We get this wild coffee scene, coffee shop scene.
Oh boy.
Where if I have to ask both of you, honestly, did you think that Emma Roberts was going to throw her 210-degree pumpkin spice latte, no foam, extra
1,000%
in everyone's face? Because I was fully prepared every single time she was handed a coffee cup of, you're about to be assaulted and burned in the face.
Yeah, they really led you on to that direction in this scene, and like, you know, based on the other horrifying acts of violence that happen in this show, that was not beyond her character. The only difference would be like this would be the only time that Kappas weren't the only witnesses. But also, speaking of origins of memes, I really did not know this is where the Senorita Awesome clip that goes around on social media constantly is from. Because holy fuck, this is I could have. Honestly, we should have done a dramatic reading of this, or not. Maybe I'll just pull the audio for this for this scene. Now that it seems to be in the public domain because there's so many memes of it. This clip of remind me of the actress's name.
Who plays Grace?
Yeah, who plays Grace?
Skylar Samuels.
Yeah,
they make Skylar Samuels do the most like 2007 awkward pick-me girl MySpace shit in this scene.
Oh my god,
that made me want to tear my eyebrows off. It is so bad that they made her say, oh, I'm not like other girls, I don't like those pumpkin spice lattes. And then for the barista, who will become an important character, to say, oh, I think I'm in love, and then have her put on the cup that her name was Senorita Awesome, and for the rest of the scene, he just calls her Senorita Awesome. It was
not to mention this character of Pete. You know, you get this real growth of like, I'm not just the coffee shop barista in my undergraduate days. I'm also the editor of the newspaper. I'm an investigative reporter. Like, I'm going to be important. I'm going to be the actual A plot of this show.
This whole scene made me want to die.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't many scenes that I was just. We haven't talked about the plot a lot in this podcast. And
neither have they.
And there's a reason, because there are this scene has some really big highs and some really big lows, right? Oof. It is a roller coaster for your attention span. And like the cafe scene, I was like, I don't need this. When we saw Mrs. Bean's face get burned off in oil, and then we saw the horrifying face melting off, got my attention. Watching women drag Mrs. Bean's body to the freezer got my attention. Yeah. Like there were moments that had my attention, and then there were a lot of moments where I was like, you don't really have my attention nearly as much as you think you do.
In a cut for time scene, they did have to phone and notify her husband, Mr. Bean.
God damn it.
Who could not answer the phone?
I was trying to figure out how to tie in a Mr. Bean joke to this.
He was left speechless. I mean, the way that this pilot... There are some interesting scenes that happen between now and then. We get more of a reveal of Dean Munch's character when she... When she sleeps with Glen Powell, and then she says, you have to figure out where your mommy issues came from. And he says, I'm pretty sure my mom.
A himbo king.
I was losing.
This show invented bottoms.
I'm losing my mind in some of these scenes. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis is eating up the scenery with some of the lines that she delivers. Like, having the ability to have this face burning off scene. Just to go back to Glen Powell, when they go to revisit the freezer, and then he says, this is the worst date ever. I'm cold and I have blue balls. Is just
I got my first
Kig.
I got my first erection to Faces of Death was like possibly the darkest line ever written.
I mean, from here we do get, there's two scenes I want to talk about with you both a little bit more. What did we think of the scene of Chanel number 2's death? Because I thought it was such a funny scene, and so, like, it wasn't even tongue-in-cheek. It was just sticking your tongue out at you, being like, this is the dumbest fucking thing you've ever seen, but you're going to laugh throughout it.
Brilliant. Spoiler alert, Ariana Grande is murdered by the Red Devil near the end of this pilot, and the way that we flip the Scream phone calls on its head for the 21st century, utilizing technology, texting the killer back and forth while he is standing 3 feet in front of you and have that entire conversation via text, and the drawn out, over dramatic, multiple flops and coming back to life of her trying to update her Facebook status with her dying breath. It's phenomenal. The physical comedy and the way that Ariana Grande just uses facial expressions throughout this scene are unparalleled. They're unmatched. She does such a good job with this death scene. Hats off to you, my little Scream Queen.
But this isn't the only death that we see. This isn't the last that we see of the Red Devil. We get one more instance, which is the idea of... I was prepared for, let's see, there's got to be one more death, right? We get that, like, that concept of the rule of threes, and we need to have at least 3 modern day murders that happen, and we've seen Mrs. Bean die, we've seen the death of Ariana Grande. Why not see Death Taylor Swift get run over by a lawnmower? And, like, that being the end of our pilot was just it was mesmerizing. I have to say, it left me being like, holy shit, screen cuts to black, and that's it.
Here's what that scene also does too. So to set it up, for Hell Week, they are all being essentially buried alive to spend overnight with only their heads popping out of the front lawn of the sorority house.
I believe it's referred to as the Gopher Challenge.
Yes, the Gopher Challenge. Thank you so much. And then this Red Devil shows up. And with a lawnmower, scares the absolute bejesus out of all of them, and then runs over Death Taylor Swift's head. This also sets up a great what's it called? A cliffhanger for the next episode, because up until this point, except for Miss Bean, everyone who has died is complicit in being terrible, in being just like rude or bullying or anything like that. Now the rules have completely flipped on their head, no pun intended, and now with someone with a pledge dying that has not done anything wrong except for, well, hiding the body of Miss Bean. But she hasn't been rude to anyone yet, so now the rules are off. And
it's also
that sets
the
up a
first
great one.
murder. It's the first murder that leaves witnesses, because if we go to the flashback of the spray tan killer in that early scene, there's no witnesses. The only person who sees it is the dying Kappa head. When Chanel number 2 dies, she is the only one who sees the Red Devil. This is the first time where there are going to be survivors who are aware that there's a killer and they can identify it. And that's how we start to set up the game of knowing what they look like and how do we stop them and how do they move. And we build upon the world of these 80s and 90s horror tropes.
So that is the end of this pilot. I know we didn't talk a lot about plot, but there was, if you go back and listen again, you'll maybe find it. I'm curious, what were things that you loved about this pilot that maybe we didn't talk about in depth?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about a plot point. I'm just kidding. I'm going to talk about the Chanel arm walk that they all do. When these girls walk in a pack with all of their arm flail movements and they're all a little bit different, walk, girls, walk. The arm work in this pilot is exquisite. I want to shout out just all of the arm choreography. It is beautiful. It is so funny.
It's silent movie funny. That's so good.
Rich, what about yourself?
Okay. So you guys both know that probably my favorite movie of all time is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Left me with a feeling that I kind of want every other movie to be like this or to feel like this. This is still my favorite Jamie Lee Curtis performance.
Oh, interesting.
Love Jamie Lee Curtis in this show. It is so good. You can tell that it was written for her. She is in the scene where she's postcoital with Glen Powell. She is absolutely ripping that joint the entire scene. That she went through an entire joint in probably 45 seconds. I just love her acting. I love the lines I love her line delivery. I love her being kind of conniving. It is so good. I really love her performance. I am super impressed with it, and I love Everything Everywhere All at Once. She deserved that Oscar.
For many people, Trading Places was their Jamie Lee Curtis sexual awakening. For Rich, it happened about 30 years later with Scream Queens.
It happened yesterday.
For myself, I am a gigantic fan of horror-based movies that are in on the joke, right? Mm-hmm. Final Girls, great movie that, not many people watched, but like very much was in on the joke of, this is a horror movie, but we're also, what happens. Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite movies of all time, because it is in on the joke immediately, and it's gigantic performances, but also a little bit of murder associated with it as well.
Quite a bit.
Which is fun. So seeing something like this, getting a lot of higher level actors to be in on the joke from the start is so much fucking fun to watch. And like letting people just go and Ryan Murphy be like, I'm going to write something ridiculous. You can blame me if you're uncomfortable with it, but you're going to say it in all earnesty is a lot of fun for the show. But also, that leads to our wait a minute moments, because there were a lot of things that were said that were wait a minute, so that you were like, holy shit, what just happened? I'm curious from the two of you, what were some wait a minute moments for you in this pilot?
What you got, Max?
I lost a lot of steam with some of the Grace B plot scenes on the back half of this episode. By the time we start getting into her and Pete sneaking into the storage facility to try to get proof of the murder, I was really losing momentum in that storyline. The second coffee shop scene where Chanel and Grace sit down and there's this power struggle of the pledge is going to live out her mom's vision of what Kappa should have been and take up the mantle, and we're going to eliminate Chanel to change the sorority for good and for everyone. I just wasn't really that captivated by it, and it's the show where I like everything going on vibe-wise, but the plot just isn't sustaining it for me.
My favorite part is that your biggest problem with it is the plot. Yeah. Just absolutely love that the biggest takeaway for you for wait a minute moments is that there was any plot at all. As if this wasn't like our main, the entire focus, or the entire lack of focus, I should say, on her on this episode.
Oh my gosh. I mean, for myself, I would agree. This show doesn't need a lot of what it has, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think we all are enjoying how over the top some of these performances are, how leaning in sometimes it is. But I think the moments when the show tries to get a little bit grounded are the moments that we're all like, I didn't really need that. Like, you know, like I want this to be 9/11 with murder. I want this to be like, or
wait, hold on, 911. You mean 911? You mean 911?
I mean 911 with horror and murder.
Because no one was really innocent on 9/11.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Meanwhile, Geoff just pulled a Halsey on the podcast and called for a second 9/11.
No, I wish that we just went full send on the idea of like, let's just make this over the top and ridiculous. Let's not try to pretend that this is something that it isn't. And like, yeah, I understand you don't really win awards for just being over the top, but you can gain a lot of audience members by doing so.
All right, number one, they call Miss Bean White Mammy. Fuck that shit. What are we doing? Number two, you're built like a Thai ladyboy. Jesus Christ. Number three, someone turned me into Jada Pinkett Smith, referring to the spray tan. Number four, everyone is encouraged to wear or be white. Number five, calling anyone deaf Taylor Swift. Number six, calling someone a predatory lesbian. Number seven, telling Miss Bean to go organize the trash. That's a short list for everything that is completely, absolutely off the wall bonkers in the show.
And again, notice we didn't talk about the plot.
So let's talk a little bit about our final question. We got an in-flight question in from Instagram. We'll talk a little bit more about how to submit those at the end of the show. But our in-flight question was very simply, you know, we heard about these parties. We saw a couple parties. What was your favorite college party theme that you ever attended? So I'm going to pass it off to you two. What is your favorite college party theme that you ever attended?
Max?
I mean, unfortunately, we never got the side boob mixer, so I'm just shaking my head here still. I've got to say the most extravagant, turning an entire college house into a interactive, like multi-purpose space, whether that was turning the entire house into a miniature golf course, or turning the entire house into an IRL Legends of the Hidden Temple game. The ability to just remove any functional space from a home and turn it entirely into funsies is the epitome of the college experience.
Rich, what about yourself?
I think the theme of mobsters and lobsters went a real long way, in the sense that if you put out a theme like that, you think everyone's going to go mobsters, and then you realize, oh no, everyone's going lobsters.
College in the early 10s, late aughts was just taking two words that rhyme and making it a theme, and we were the better for it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, one of my favorites was there was one summer after our sophomore year that we just sat down and said, what are two words that rhyme? That would be a fun party. And from that, not only did Mobsters and Lobsters come out, but also Cowboy boots and bathing suits came out from that, and that was a banger of a party. So many people wore both. They didn't even want to choose. They were like, I have bathing suits and cowboy boots.
Well, it's not cowboy suits or cowboy boots or bathing suits. It's cowboy boots and bathing suits.
And this is to say nothing of barbarians and librarians.
Yes.
Also a banger.
Oh my god. Well, thank you so much for that in-flight question. Let's talk a little bit about the history of this show. This show had 2 seasons and 23 episodes. The first season was actually seen as fairly successful, right? Enough to order a 10-episode second season on Fox. You'll notice the smaller amount of episodes, and this was to mimic the way that Ryan Murphy normally works on FX. But with the first season, there was an average of 4.27 million viewers per episode, which is pretty decent in 2015. It started to drop precipitously into season 2, and
we broke out the big words.
It did kill off Ariana Grande in the first 30 minutes, so I guess that makes sense.
So it averaged about 2.28 million in its second season, with the finale only getting 1.37 million, and that was one of the higher episodes in that season. There were some really, and I'm just going to say this, honestly, nasty reviews of the second season in my research of it, of people just saying it was a cash grab, that, there were some great guest acting performances, but the rest of the cast should not have been there, and that you never want to read that. That sort of sucks. As far as the show being shown, it was shown in the US, the UK, Ireland, Canada, and Australia. As far as awards go, surprisingly, 0
I call that
surfboards.
The white UN.
There were 0 surfboards for the show, but there were 17 nominations and 3 wins. There was a Golden Globe nomination as well, and that was for Jamie Lee Curtis, who did not win, but it's an honor just to be nominated. As far as the rest of the show, you can find the show a lot of places: Hulu, Disney Plus. It's even on CW right now on a streaming deal. So if you're interested in trying to figure out what the plot of this pilot is, go venture off and find out for us. Rich, it is now time for your game of the week.
Yeah. Instead of, I know we chose this episode, or we chose this show a little bit later in our normal process of picking shows. So obviously the one thing that we couldn't stop gushing about in this show is the star power of everyone involved, and what they went on to do, what they did leading up to this. So I would love to play a little game of ranking what you guys think the entire cast of the pilot has won more of. And these are all award wins based on they're what we associate with acting with TV and movies. So I'm going to give a list.
Best fight.
I'm gonna give a list. And I went through everyone who appeared in the first episode's IMDb and wrote down all the awards that they have won.
Holy
specifically,
shit.
And the ones that we talk about. So what I'm considering right now is People's Choice, Emmys, Golden Globes, Oscars, Kids' Choice, SAG, and Teen Choice. And
so all those combined, and we're nominating, or we're ranking.
All of those combined for all of the actors. What do you think is the order of how many they have won collectively?
Okay, so hypothetically, and for my audience, I'm going to ask the dumb question, so you can play at home. So we are ranking. So hypothetically, I think that the most Kid Choice Awards have been won over the most, and then second would hypothetically be Emmys, right?
Let's go. How about you guys work on this together, and I will give you the answer afterwards. So I'll write down Kids' Choice. Max, what you got?
All right, so I'm going to say my top one is going to be Teen Choice Awards.
Okay.
And I would follow that with Golden Globes.
Interesting.
And at my third slot, People's Choice.
And then Jeff?
Yeah, I would say Kids' Choice, Teen, People's Choice, Golden Globes at the bottom.
Now this is going to change this year when Glen Powell single-handedly sweeps the Oscars for the 1-2 punch of Hitman and Twisters.
Yes, 100%. He's also going to win the makeup award and the costuming award because he did it himself, 100%.
Right, because he bought his own cowboy hat for Twisters. And also, did you see all of his outfits in Hitman? He's going to win it for both movies.
Yes, he is. He's going to get 2 nominations. Rich, inform us, what is the order?
Okay, so number 1, hands down, by far, quite a bit, is the Teen Choice Award. So Max, you nailed that one. Collectively, throughout the entire cast, 15 Teen Choice Awards. 15.
That's insane.
And that's wins. That's not even nominations. There
was a Jonas brother in this pilot, guys. Come on!
Kids like the Jonas Brothers, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, there are 15 wins. Nominations, probably it's closer to 20 or 30. It's an insane amount. Between Ariana Grande and Nick Jonas, it's bananas. All right, number 2, People's Choice with 6.
Interesting.
Well, you do go from a teen to a people, as we've established on TVPL, yes.
You don't go backwards.
And then number 3 is a tie, 5 SAG Awards and 5 Kids' Choice Awards.
Interesting.
And after that, Keke Palmer has 2 Emmys. The Golden Globes, there's 1 for Jamie Lee. Oh, sorry. There's 2 Golden Globes for Jamie Lee Curtis and 1 Oscar for Jamie Lee Curtis.
Interesting. Well, Rich, thank you so much for your game of the week.
It's been the awards roundup.
Yeah, there'll be more Oscars in a couple of months.
Remember, you go from a kid to a teen to a people. That is the TVPL way, just in case you forgot.
Linear plot.
So, boys, our flight is coming to a land. And before we go, I have 2 questions for each of you. One is, based off of this pilot, right? Hulu wants you to watch the second episode right with the first because they are combined into one rather than giving you the choice of watching or clicking next episode. Did you or would you just continue watching the full 90-minute pilot that Hulu has built? And then second is, the show only got 23 episodes. And based off of the format, they do want it to be an anthology-like series. Do you think there are more stories to tell that Ryan Murphy maybe had cooked up that you'd be interested in watching? Or does a show like this have a place on TV or streaming right now? Rich, I'm going to start with you. What are you thinking?
It was hard for me not to watch the rest of the pilot, honestly. And I am not a gore fan by any means. I did not like the scene where Mrs. Bean gets her face fried off. I had to hold my hand over my face. I did not want to see that shit. That said, 100% I'm watching the second episode. This is so stupid and so funny. And so just I don't know. It's so campy. It's so crazy. 100% I'm watching number 2. If we're going to come back and make yet another, parody of horror movies, this needs to be specific to, you can't just keep going on about Scream. Maybe a movie. I would not greenlight another season of this.
Max, what about yourself?
I cannot coast on vibes alone, and unfortunately, I had a hard time by the 35-minute mark of even wanting to continue with this episode. That's going to be a no for me. I'll continue with Scream Queens. However, we have seen such a resurgence in these throwback-style horror comedies, movies like Happy Death Day, which I'm a huge fan of, Freaky, Ready or Not, The Blackening, and I think that you could see something like this doing the AHS anthology where we parody the teen tropes of the horror genre. Not every AHS season is as successful as its predecessors. Some get high praise, some are kind of considered to be flops, but they keep going and they keep changing things up. I think there is a world where we could see that with Scream Queens if it wanted to really play into a specific type of horror franchise with each iteration. But as for this one, I'm probably going to pass.
Yeah, and Max, I think you brought up 2 really good points because, as I said, I need as much fun as roller coasters are. I love a roller coaster. I don't like my shows being roller coasters. I like to have steady enjoyment with maybe a peek at the end where I'm like, oh, fuck, I need to watch the next episode. And this show had me yearning for plot. Like literally just being like, what is the plot? Why are we moving forward? Why is Grace not at the original sorority recruitment? Why does she just show up? Was that a deleted scene that we just didn't really enjoy too much? Like, I want more Jamie Lee Curtis. Can I get more of that? Can she be in every single scene? Like, there were instances where I think the show's highs were so good, but they didn't make up for the lows for me. And that's why I can't give this a second episode. And I am in complete agreement with you, Max. I think that there is a space for this in the world of pop culture, whether that's just movies like other ones, like Megan. Megan's getting a second movie, which I'm really pumped about. Yeah, Mithrigan. And they're supposedly even thinking about doing a TV show. Like, that's going to be fun. That is something that I can't wait to see. But do it well, do it right, and don't forget the plot, please, if you're going to do said thing.
They're going to turn the A into a 4. Sorry.
Oh, God. But, gentlemen, that is our flight. But before we go, where can folks find both of you?
You can catch me slamming some Bartles and James wine coolers at Friday night's Big Side Boob Mixer. You can find me on all things social media at Maxwell Sing. You can find original sketch comedy from myself and Rich over on TikTok at Dadwagon Comedy.
You can find me Googling Blood Oath and seeing what comes up. You can also find me... We didn't even get to that part. That was my favorite line of the entire show. You can also find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich.
And you can find me looking up words that rhyme together. I'm really having a tough time with pilots and. But if you were looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. If you're looking for the TV Pilot's License, you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as YouTube and social media at TV Pilot's License. If you have a question about the show or for our next episode, you can email us at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for our Instagram for a few sneak previews of some of the stuff that we have coming up. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then...
Nasim Pedrad, call me.